we are here with Patrice Bain. How are you, Patrice, first of all?
Hello, I am fine. I'm honored to be on this podcast. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Great. So I'm totally delighted to have the honor of talking with you. And also it's my second full in English interview. So it's like also for me as an English learner, it's a great challenge, but I love it. So you have been such an important voice about applying cognitive science internationally into classrooms. And for me personally, have been really great to know more about learning sciences, and your book, Powerful Teaching, made an impact in me, like personally, because I think probably it's like the first book that I read with so many practical insights, like from research and really practical with classroom examples. So great to see this book like in a testimony of the alliance between research and practice. That's something I think worldwide is really lacking. Like in Chile, we also have this challenge to create these bridges between research and practice. So, and we know each other a bit because we were last year in Research Chat Toronto and in Denver, which were really fantastic events. And I understand that you were recently in New York and Dubai for the same event.
Yes, Research Ed, and I know you have them in Chile. These conferences are such a celebration of learning. To be able to have teachers and researchers side by side, it truly feels like a great big family where we all just want to help our students learn.
Yeah, totally. All the people that were there are in love with research informed practices and learning. So it's really a great experience. So before going to some specific questions I have in my mind, I want to introduce you to our audience. So Patrice Bain is an award-winning teacher in the US with extensive classroom experience and author of 3 books, Powerful Teaching, which we translated into Spanish a few years ago, A Parent's Guide to Powerful Teaching, and Powerful Classroom, that is your last book, recently published. Now I want you to present yourself better, because of course you have a long story with learning and research.
Well, let me go back to where it started. So
Right.
I've been teaching about 12 years. And I really couldn't figure out, why do some of my students learn really well, but some didn't? And, I was the teacher in the room. I know what information was being presented. Why the disconnect? And there was no place for me to go to find out those answers. This was back in 2006, and most research in the United States at that time had been done at universities with college students in laboratories. And most of the research was written in journals and in papers that I didn't have access to. And so I kept trying to figure out why and how. And I happened to meet Dr. Mark McDaniel, who introduced me to Dr. Henry Roediger, and they are 2 of the authors of the fabulous book, Make It Stick. And they were talking about learning and memory, and we just clicked. And so we got to know each other, and they said, would you be interested in having us do some research in your classroom? And I'm like, absolutely, this would answer my questions. So they wrote some grants, and we got permission from parents and from the school and administrators. And in 2007, the research started in my classroom, and it was the first in the United States where research was done in an authentic classroom. And so what I learned from that, well, Mattis, it was really kind of amazing, because as a teacher, we know, oh my goodness, teachers are so busy. So I not only was teaching, but working on the research, and it helped me really understand why my students learned and why some didn't. And the research, because I was understanding that, allowed me to start developing strategies that would include the retrieval and spacing and interleaving and metacognition and those things that we had been studying in my classroom. And so, years went by. And again, like I said, we're so busy. We didn't even realize what a big deal it was at the time, And then in 2019, Dr. Pooja Agarwal, who was also a researcher who worked with me every day in my classroom, we decided, this is a good story. And what we have learned could really help other teachers with those same questions of how and why do some of my students learn and some not. So that was how the whole story of powerful teaching came about.
Great. And it sounds really, well, I know a bit of the story, but it's really interesting, like Pooja being at your classrooms where you were the main teacher. You worked so like a strong alliance between a classroom teacher, and a researcher, because at least in Chile, I would say that the most of the research is from labs or researchers that goes sometimes to the classrooms, recollect some test and then going back to the university. So always have been for me a really amazing story, this alliance of you two. How many years or how much time you were in this alliance with Pooja and her teachers?
Well, it started out, like I said, in 2007. And when I was trying to get the approval through my school, here our top leader is called a superintendent. And my superintendent said, in order for him to approve this research in my classroom, that the research needed to revolve around my teaching. That my teaching was not to revolve around the research.
Perfect. Yeah.
So Dr. Agarwal sat in my classroom every day, 5 days a week for 18 weeks.
Wow.
An entire semester. Just really understanding the nuances of my teaching. And so then, we would talk almost every day after school, observations that she had. And we would work with Dr. McDaniel and Dr. Roediger about, how to design this. And so it was really, it was 18 weeks before we even started our first study in the classroom that so much was put into how we were going to do it. And I think that is so unique that I'm not sure I've heard of this happening other places. So often a researcher will come in and conduct an experiment or, pull students out of a classroom.
Yeah.
But we really wanted this authentic classroom where students are absent, where,
Yeah.
there's fire drills, where, loudspeakers, where
Fighting.
there's bells.
Yeah.
So we really wanted the research to reflect what real classrooms are like.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's totally amazing, really. Yeah. I don't know of other experience like that. Like in research is really historical what you did. Yeah.
So to go
Yeah.
back and answer your question a little bit. So I worked with Dr. Agarwal. Well, I worked with her for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
But she was in my classroom for about 2 years.
Okay.
And the study went on for several more years. And she started working with other teachers in my school and then also high school teachers. So the research, was not just in my classroom, which I should say were 11-year-olds. And I taught world history. And it was the first time in our curriculum that this had been taught. So most of my students came in with blank slates, which was wonderful as far as really being able to do the research.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked with Dr. Agarwal in 2019 when we wrote Powerful Teaching. We were still working together, even though she was in Boston and I was in St. Louis. Still monthly phone calls and tossing ideas and research.
Yeah. I think it's great to know that, because I think it's also really difficult to find research, like long-term research, like knowing what happened in the long term and not just like in a few months or something that can be like effective in the short term, but not necessarily in the long term. That we know that learning science say to us that some strategies that can be very effective for the short term are not effective for the long term. So that's a characteristic of that research that is really important.
Yes.
And how do you think that you became a leading voice in applying cognitive science to classroom? Tell us a bit, like when did you start to give conference, because you are like around the world giving conference for some years ago now. So.
I started working with other schools and conferences back in 2010 or maybe 2009.
Okay.
2009, 2010, I was already presenting at conferences and working with schools and sharing my passion, because I found what worked. And I think what is the most exciting for me is every teacher can do what I do. My students so they all learned and learned really well. My students' scores were so incredibly high. A couple of years I kept my own research, and consistently my class averages were over 96% with all of the students. And I had every single student. If they were in 6th grade, I had them, regardless of their ability levels. But I found through the research and through the strategies I developed that every single student, no matter the ability, can be a successful learner. And so that's why I couldn't wait to share these strategies and this information with others, because this is accessible to every single teacher.
Yeah, the accessibility of that kind of work you do is great, because I think that also in Chile we have the same problem. Sometimes in some schools the cognitive science is something like really abstract. At least for me, that I studied psychology. For me, I had some cognitive science courses, but like really generic, and some of them were really like in abstract principles, but they were never like translated into practice, like in classroom practice or in education. It's really important the work that, of people like you creating or advocating for this application, like practical application. And I think that in other countries it's the same. Like teacher education faculties are not necessarily teaching these insights.
And, you know, that's very true in the United States as well. We have our work cut out for us. But what is so exciting is there is a wealth of information now available that wasn't available in 2007. Yeah. And, you know, with social media and being able to connect with the people who have written wonderful books, podcasts like what you were doing. Yeah. You know, we are making the information, we are making it accessible. We have our work cut out. There's a lot more to do, but we're getting there. Yeah.
It's really touching to be in this. You said like in your book, like in this learning revolution. Like it's hard, but we can see how it's moving. Like how more people are getting interested in learning science and evidence-based practice in general. And it's like, I don't know, throwing something to the water, and you have like these vibrations that go further, and you don't know where they are going. That's really amazing. Yeah. Let's talk about a bit about the book Powerful Teaching first. Well, you already told us the story about that. But for example, taking that experience, like bridging the practice and research, what are your recommendations for teachers regarding collaboration with researchers? Like, is a good idea to work with them or no, or when you can do it or not?
Here's my opinion on that. I think as teachers, we often kind of put researchers maybe up on a pedestal that they know so much, and maybe even we get a little intimidated sometimes.
Yeah.
But to me, I think what is crucial is that you both have an equal seat at the table.
Yeah.
That researchers know about memory and principles of learning, but teachers, oh my goodness, we know about teaching and we know about our students. And to me, it is just so important to have this equal footing, that you both have an equal respect for each other's talents, for each other's knowledge, that, you know, one is not in a higher place than the other. But like me working with Dr. Agarwal and Dr. McDaniel, Dr. Roediger, having that equal seat at the table, you know, they listen to me, I listen to them, we shared ideas, and that I truly think is crucial, because when you both come together with the whole purpose of trying to figure out best practices and best learning, you have an equal partnership. And I don't think that is stressed enough.
Yeah, I agree with that. It have to be like a symmetrical relationship. I think that's also something that is really hard to find, I think. in my experience. But the teacher voice really is crucial. It's like you have to listen to teachers if you want to research something that is happening in their classrooms.
Yes.
It's like it should be obvious, but for some people it's not. So it's strange, but okay.
And that's why too, some of the research where they will pull 2 or 3 students out and have them do something on the side and then go back. So much is lost in the dynamics of a classroom when that is a research style that is happening.
Yeah. In that sense, what are your recommendations for researchers who want to work with teachers?
I think, like I said, make sure to value the expertise of the teacher. We have been trained how to teach, not necessarily how we learn. That's the researcher's part, but we have been taught how to teach. And there are so many nuances and things that just come automatic to us when we've been in the classroom for years that really makes a difference with the research. So I think really having that equal partnership with the teacher and respecting what they bring to the table.
Yeah, great. So another question. Why do teachers need to know how students learn?
Boy, that sure is a great question. Because now we know how we learn. And too often, when I think back to before the research in my classroom, I wasted way too much time. I spent time maybe on homework that wasn't effective, on study skills that weren't effective. And I simply didn't know better. And so with the research, why it's important to know how to learn is it doesn't add more to a teacher's already overcrowded plate, but it really helps streamline and create efficiency and effectiveness of how we learn. And so in the long run, we as teachers are more efficient, and what we teach is much more effective knowing these. And, on one of the studies that we did, the first year we were studying retrieval practice, and we had a lot of statistics backing up that, yes, retrieval practice really does work. And so Dr. Agarwal and I wanted to do, we had an idea. And that was, after the students using retrieval practice, what would they know at the end of the year? And so we decided to give them a pop final, which means an unannounced big test. And it was unannounced because we didn't want anyone to study. We didn't want them to know. We really wanted simply to find out, okay, we're the last week of school. What do you remember from this year? Yeah. It also did not go in the grade book because that wouldn't have been fair.
Okay.
But my students remembered over 79% of what I had taught when retrieval practice had been used, versus I think it was maybe 60% or maybe even less. I'd have to look that up. But for sure, they remembered 79% without any studying. And as teachers, we work so hard. And we don't want to teach this and have our students do well and then forget it 2 weeks later. So being able to use these strategies and have students really be able to remember. Let me share a fun story with you.
Of course.
This year, like in the last month and a half, I ran into one of my old students that I had not seen in 22 years.
Wow.
And you know, he asked me the dreaded question, Mrs. Bain, do you remember who I am? And it's like, because when I had them, they were 11 years old and not 6'3",
no.
a beard.
Yeah.
But I said, let me peer into your eyes. And once I did, I said, you're Robbie.
Oh,
I remember
that's
you.
slowing.
Oh, thank goodness for that. But, right away, after 22 years of not us seeing each other, had no idea we would see each other, he started rattling off fact after fact after fact of things he remembered from my class that he had learned 22 years earlier.
Wow. And,
when we want our students to have learning stick, this is the way we do it. I every year would get emails from students from when I had them when they were 11 to when they were in college and say, oh my gosh, we're talking about this in my college class. And I remembered this and this and this and this, that it just, this is why we teach. Not so the learning goes in and out, but it really sticks.
Yeah, that's the core of learning. And it is interesting to think about, for us, it's maybe a little obvious, but changing the focus between like the codification of information, like just me talking about something and expecting that that the students listen and codify that in their memory, that is different of knowing that retrieval, for example, is crucial, like is the a building block of learning. Like if I don't try to retrieve information, I will forget that information. So that specific information. So is, well, of course, in your books, the retrieval practice is something that is, I don't know, it's like the first building block of learning. We can't just teach and expect that learning has happened. Like we have to make sure that they can retrieve that information, they can connect the like that information with prior knowledge, and so on. So I think that also your book, Powerful Teaching, is really great to giving like also practical strategies for retrieval practice.
Because before the research started in my classroom, I didn't know any of that. That information wasn't available to any of us at that time, and so and
also it's important how maybe I could know like in the theory that retrieval is important, but if I don't have like practical examples of how to do it, I probably won't do it well. So I don't know if you can tell me about some of the strategies you came up for allowing retrieval practice or promoting retrieval practice.
I'd be happy to. I think one of the main things to keep in mind is retrieval is the process of pulling information out.
Yeah.
And there are so many ways, and there are so many strategies available that it's important for a teacher to be able to just have a variety of strategies in their back pocket, because chances are one work for everyone. So you have to have several. But one that I found that was very effective was simply, I called it a mini quiz, simply because the students never were nervous about these. And I called them mini quizzes because I used little 2-inch by 3-inch pieces of paper. So how could that be intimidating, right?
Yeah.
I would simply hand these out and they would number 1 through 5. And whatever we discussed the previous day, I would just write down and put them on little slips of paper and stick them in a basket. And we would start class where I would randomly choose 5. And I would read a question. They would answer. I would then collect them. We would go over the answers so they got some immediate feedback. Instead of spending hours at night grading papers, I spent about a 15-minute analysis after school and then would go back over the answers again the next day. And because I taught my students how to learn, I started every first day with, I'm your teacher and I'm going to teach you how to learn. So they knew about retrieval and spacing and interleaving, metacognition. And they knew, retrieval should always be low stakes or no stakes. So if they missed some of these on the mini quiz,
it doesn't matter really. Yeah, it's like
to me, what I always told them is, this is your roadmap. Don't think this is failure. This is simply a sign showing you, you need to go that way a little bit more. And when students don't internalize failure, but instead see learning as roadmaps, they're just so much more positive and invested in the learning. So the mini quizzes were a big one that I would do every day. And then at the end of the week, I would only leave in those that I knew. I would call those my big ticket items, something that maybe students needed to know for an exam or for the next chapter, or, maybe a project down the road. And so those I would leave in a bigger basket.
Okay.
And Friday, I would randomly choose 10. So it could have been a question from 3 weeks ago or 2 months ago. But again, it was low stakes. And so my students really kind of got excited about, I do remember that. And so you're incorporating, I call those the power tools. And it really helped reinforce learning, which is why they could remember 79% at the end of the school year without any studying.
Yeah. And they also would feel the achievement of understanding something and learning, and they weren't like forgetting as maybe before they do, because we all have the experience of like forgetting things in school. So that's amazing. And you said that some of the questions you tried to pick them like 1 week, like 2 weeks after, and you are thinking about a spaced practice, right?
Always.
Yeah.
Always.
Can you explain what is the spaced practice for our listeners?
Let me talk about all four real quick. So we call them in Powerful Teaching, we call them power tools, and they are principles that have been robustly researched. We know there are so many studies that prove that these really work. So the first one is retrieval.
Perfect.
And my definition is pulling information out. Dr. Agarwal has a great quote that we use in the book, and it was, too often as teachers, we focus on putting information in.
Yeah.
What if instead we concentrated on pulling information out? And that's retrieval. Well, we know that forgetting is a huge part of learning. And we know that we start forgetting within 20 minutes after we've learned something. And if we don't go over it again, that information is basically lost.
Yeah.
And that's so important for teachers to know. So the second power tool is spaced practice or spacing. And I define that as revisiting retrieval over time. So there's something called the forgetting curve that, like I said, we start forgetting. But there's times that just as we start forgetting, if we can pull out retrieval once again, it actually strengthens that memory. And as we start forgetting it again, we retrieve it and it strengthens it even more. And so that is what spacing is, spacing out and revisiting that retrieval. The third power tool is interleaving. And interleaving is where you're able to compare and contrast similar items. So, for example, in math, you might do 5 addition problems and 5 subtraction problems and 5 multiplication. That's called blocking. You do everything the same number of times. And what happens is the students always know what's coming, so they don't really have to process.
To think, yeah.
Yeah. So interleaving is where you switch things up a little bit. So maybe you do an addition and then a division problem and maybe 2 subtraction problems, but you mix it up. And so often interleaving is thought of as use in math. I found interleaving really effective in my history class. So, for example, when I was teaching the ancient river civilizations, most textbooks would have you, okay, you're teaching the Nile River, and then that's over. And then you go on and you teach Mesopotamia.
Yeah.
And then you go on and not going back. So what I did to incorporate interleaving is with all of my chapters and units, I would create an essential question. So when I was studying ancient river civilizations, my essential question was, how did flooding affect the ancient river civilizations? Because it was different in each civilization. Yeah. And so, when I was teaching the history and geography of the Nile, we talked about flooding. And then when we talked about Mesopotamia, we could compare and contrast how differently the civilizations were affected. And then again with the Huang River and the Indus River. So by the time I finished ancient river civilizations, my students could really look through and through of these civilizations. Or when we were studying revolutions, my essential question might be, how did the working class change as a result of revolutions? And whether it was the American Revolution or the French Revolution or the Industrial Revolution or the Russian Revolution, they could look through the different revolutions with this lens. And that's interleaving. That's where you get your deep and critical thinking. So there was retrieval, and then spacing, and then interleaving. And the fourth power tool is metacognition. And I define that as discriminating what you know from what you don't know. And to me, this too is huge for teachers, because too often we don't give our students an opportunity to test their metacognition until it's a big test. And instead, what we need to do is give them all sorts of opportunities for retrieval throughout the course of study that allows them to figure out what they know and what they don't know before they get to that big test. And when you do that, students, when they know how to learn, they will spend time on what they don't know versus studying what they already know. Too often, that's the way students study, and it brings forth this false
illusion, like illusion of knowledge or competence. Yeah.
Right. And then they will take a test and not do well. And they're devastated because they know they worked really hard. Parents as well will have seen their child studying at the kitchen table for an hour and not do well. That's so disappointing. So metacognition, being able to have our students know how to discriminate what they know from what they don't, is crucial. So retrieval and spacing and interleaving and metacognition simply go hand in hand. And when students learn how to learn, because sometimes they will have a teacher who really is into the science of learning, but often they have teachers who aren't. And so when we teach our students how to learn, that is the gift that they take with them for the rest of their lives, whatever grade, university, on a job.
Yeah. Self-learning of whatever they want to learn. Yeah. And I was thinking about the retrieval. For example, we can do it with more tests, but as you said, they must to be like a low stake test for preventing the anxiety or stress and so on. But still people could say, my students listen the word test and they already are anxious. So what would you say about that?
That's why I like mini quiz. There are so many other ways. Using whiteboards, using think, pair, share, using turn and talks. And the beautiful thing, those don't have to be graded.
Yeah.
But you can, and here's something else that is so easy. When you start the day and your students come in, rather than saying, okay, class, remember yesterday we talked about whatever.
Yeah.
Simply say, okay, class, yesterday, what did we talk about? And, give them enough pause time.
Sometime, yeah.
Yeah. And then they could write it on a whiteboard, or they could do a turn and talk, let them talk for maybe 15, 20 seconds. And then you do a group share. And within 90 seconds, you have started your class rich with retrieval. Yeah. So, knowing these strategies, that they aren't going to create more grading for you, but they create the opportunities to bring out these power tools with your students.
Yeah, and indeed, I think that Pooja Agarwal have also a paper where she talks about the anxiety, test anxiety or something like that, and she said that there's I think that's also in the book, like the lowering of the anxiety when students are exposed to the questions and tests, but that they can achieve learning, really real learning through that.
Yes. That study was done in my school district. Okay. And so it was over 1,500 students were simply asked, does using retrieval make you more or less anxious for unit tests? And the results were, and I'm pretty sure I have the right number here, but I believe it was only 8% that felt they felt more stress, which meant 92% of students. And we know why too. It happens, this stress and anxiety happens when, number one, it's for a high test or a high stakes exam, and retrieval wasn't used throughout the course of study. And so we know how to reduce anxiety for our students.
Yeah, that's great, because sometimes people could say like, okay, this sounds great, but it's only a cognitive thing, like you are just thinking about academic learning and so on. But this also supposes that you have a good relationship with your students. You are not like stressing them out because you want it. You are trying to give them the best you can, and also they show it to you.
Yes, absolutely.
Let's talk about other book, Parent Guide to Powerful Teaching. I haven't read it yet, but I will. And how...
That's also been translated into Spanish.
Yeah, right. I have the copy, the Spanish copy. Yeah, I have to read it. So how can parents have a role in this learning revolution?
They have such a vital role. In fact, I call it the teaching triangle, which is that all important collaboration between student, parent, and teacher. And so, I had done a national survey, and I asked parents, what are two things that would most help you? I can't remember how I asked the question, but two things that would most help you with your child in studying, or something like that. And the number one answer was, how do I help my child study? That is like a universal, international concern.
Yeah, of course.
And so I spent a lot of time working with parents. When we had an open house, I would talk about learning. When we had parent-teacher conferences, I would talk about how their child learns. So I really felt this partnership. And once parents understand this, and they understand retrieval and spacing, if we want our students to be able to retrieve and we know spacing, something so easy to do is to simply send home some questions to parents. This is something we studied last week. When you're in the car or at dinner, why don't you ask these? And then I would always give the parent the answer too, to make sure that, their child had the correct answer. But what happens is you are having this great retrieval and spacing going on at home. And what parents told me is, instead of saying, how was your day? But instead saying, a question like, oh, what was something in history that really surprised you? And parents told me that conversations changed. Dinner. And parents would tell me, it's like I can get into my child's brain and figure out what they're thinking. And so I saw how really important this was. So I wrote a parent's guide to powerful teaching. And my conditions were, it had to be less than 100 pages, and it had to be less than $10, because I really wanted it accessible. Monetarily, intellectually, it is like me sitting down with parents and having a conversation. So parents can get the book, but it's also a way for teachers to figure out how to have that dialogue with parents about learning. So that is a parent's guide to powerful teaching.
Great. I can imagine that difference between telling the question, like just asking how were your day, and what did you learn is like amazing. What you can start to talk with your kid. And it's like, it's only if parents know the importance of retrievals, with just that knowledge, they can start to do this, and also is something that can be fun. Like, okay,
Yes.
tell me something that I don't know, even I don't know as a adult. So you learn, and the kid also learn. So
Exactly.
I think that is amazing. Yeah. And about your last book, tell us about what is about the last book, Powerful Classrooms.
Well, so Powerful Teaching talks about the journey of the research and what works in classrooms. Parents' Guide is just that, a guide for parents. And so my third book is a companion book to Powerful Teaching. But I had several ideas that I wanted to pursue. And it started out because frequently people would tag me on social media that they had used this strategy or that strategy, and I would bookmark it or try to save it or print it. And about 2 years ago, I realized, where are all of these? And I thought, I need to simply go through all my bookmarks and emails and social media and just put them all in one place. And I thought, well, if I want them all in one place, maybe other people would too. So that was my first idea. And my second idea was, there are teachers around the world who are using these strategies, who are using the learning science, the science of learning. And it is time that we begin to amplify those teacher voices. It's not just someone like me who has written a book, but let's get into schools and let's get into classrooms and hear the teacher voices who are having great success. I think that is so valuable. Yeah. So the first was a place for strategies. The second reason was to amplify teacher voices. And then the third, I just happened to ponder another question, and I thought of all these incredible people that I follow, like Dan Willingham and Tom Sherrington, and you name it. I mean, like 50 people who have influenced me. And I thought, who influences them?
Yeah.
Who influences Dan Willingham, And so I wrote to them and I asked them each 3 questions. I said, of your own work, what would you most recommend? Of someone else's work, what would you recommend? And the third question is, who influences you? And so those 3 aspects are put together in Powerful Classrooms. So it's like a one-stop shop, that it is absolutely filled, everything in one place, full of resources and strategies and teacher voices. And, I am so proud, because I think that is an avenue that we need to start. We need to start using. There are so many wonderful books out there, but let's start focusing on the teachers who are doing it, because once teachers can see themselves in these other classrooms and how they can bring those other classrooms into theirs, we can change the world.
Yeah. They get also really inspired by people like you, that classroom teachers that started to apply research and in an effective way, and is really, as you say, like the importance of amplifying the voice of teachers, something that I feel is also really important here in Chile, and that's why I'm interviewing you, of course, and I also have interviewed some Chilean teachers also, and there's are like some voices that are starting to to pop out here in Chile also, and I received some emails sometimes that, oh, okay, Matthias, I like your podcast, and I would love to be in the podcast someday. I read your books. I read Powerful Teaching, and recently we had Leonel Enriquez that we posted in a podcast, and he's really is a math teacher, and he loved Craig Barton. He read your book, and it's so great listen to him, like how he applied rhetorical practice, spaced practice, and so it's really touching to be in this, as you say, in this learning revolution, trying to,
yeah. You are doing such important work. Being able to see you in Toronto and see Denver, creating an international voice and you representing Chile and bringing information and taking information back, and on your podcast, you're making a difference.
Thank you so much. It's really, I don't know how to say it, but because I don't have more like vocabulary, but for me it's a dream.
Aren't we in such an exciting time?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Carl Hendrick wrote something like in the last month, and it said it takes about 17 years for ideas to progress. And, that is so on target, because that research started in 2007, and it is, Powerful Teaching came out in 2019, but it's like, yes, this movement that seemed like it took
we're seeing it. Yeah. It's happening. Yeah.
To get started, but you can just feel it. Like being in Dubai last week, it was teachers from the United Arab Emirates and from Pakistan and from all over were there, and they're understanding it, and they're into the science of learning, and the people in the UK and in Chile and Canada and United States. It's like it's happening, and we get to play a small little role in that.
Yeah. It's incredible. Yeah, I feel that Aptus is like my home, so it's like a privilege for me to do this kind of work. I think it's also something that is really, I think is a space that is not easy to find. Like I have time to read, I have time to interview people like you, I have time to write about teaching and learning, and also to have be in touch with schools and teachers. So it's really a privilege. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. Doesn't it make you wonder, if it takes 15, 17 years, think about 15 years from now.
Yeah. It's crazy.
Think about that learning revolution of how many millions of children will benefit from this.
Yeah, totally. And it's like what I said about the water vibrations, that you don't know where it's going, like in 10 years more, or I don't know.
Yes.
You can impact so many people. So it's great. No, it's really amazing to have this opportunity.
Oh, the honor is all mine. You are doing great work, and how lucky for me to be on your podcast. And we're sharing what works, and that's really
it is the same passion. So that's amazing. Okay, so take care and see you soon.
I hope.
See you soon, I hope. Yeah. See you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.